G'day everyone, Rod Culleton. I'm just jumping in the driver's seat. I wanted to give an update, as always, on what we're achieving. And look, as you're aware, I've actually got three matters, and I'm going to just address them one by one today. First of all, very good news on the title information, that is fraud on title. It certainly has put a crowbar in the top of the gearbox. We are getting responses back from the Commissioner of Titles, ones that are submitting new submissions are being finding a conduit straight up to the Commissioner of Titles, and of course this affects the state and treasury. And I'll also need to say that certain caveats have been put on properties, even with the titles that have changed out of their name. They're putting a caveat on claiming a equitable right back in the property, because in actual fact there was fraud on title, and if there is any state remuneration, obviously that caveat's going to prevent further dealings with the property. Okay, look, I've met with federal senators now, and they've all interestingly asked me how many cases do we believe are subject to fraud on title. Well, just in West Australia alone there are many, many cases, and nationally there are thousands, obviously. So we are definitely on top of that, and I think it's very important that, because Treasury has been put on notice of this, that there should be provisions in the state budget, knowing that not only federal senators now have been shown the crimes that have been committed, there is no question about that. The Commissioner of Titles is subject to those criminal actions by certain individuals within the legal fraternity. There is no question about that. So look, at this stage, pretty much the Commissioner needs to have a pooey or get off the potty. She can't keep holding back, because they are in a conundrum, and there's no way out for them. And each time it goes on, not only do people also need to use the facility, the state is liable for massive compensation, which is obviously compounding by the day. But let me just come back to you. I'm doing this sort of stuff because I feel it's important, and I'm not interested in what people's views are, whether they support what I'm doing or not. But in order to win a fight, you've got to get in the fight. So I've got three matters going, and one you're going to be very interested in. I'll play you some recordings, but it's again another referral it's a hat trick by the AEC. The Australian Electoral Commission again have referred me to the Australian Federal Police. I mean, honestly, if the AEC rode me any harder, it would be out my mouth. But I have to deal with their actions, and you're going to be really encouraged by what I'm going to present. I've actually done a media statement today to combat this absolute nonsense referral. And I want to make it very clear that the Australian Federal Police, on the first referral, I was able to prove there's no Commonwealth, so there was no offence under Section 136 of the Criminal Code of 1995 to give a false declaration to a Commonwealth entity, because as we all know, Whitlam removed the Commonwealth in 1973, and pretty much we have been running under a de facto government. There is no question about that. The Australian Federal Police, on that first referral, ran for the hills, and I was never prosecuted. Now, with the second referral by Andrew Johnson, who is a little bit different than Paul Pirani, and I might say that Paul Pirani left his post when he couldn't show that the referral was valid, or lawful, or whatever you want to call it. We've now got Andrew Johnson, who takes a different view, who's still trying to prosecute me on the second referral, which has been going some nearly 3 years, I guess. It's coming up to 3 years, and we haven't even got to a trial, and now they're trying to refer me again to the Australian Federal Police, and I will take you through that. So while I've got you on the phone, On the 11th of April, on the phone, on live stream, on the 11th of April 2025, the Australian Electoral Commission again referred me to the Australian Federal Police. Now, I got a email from the Australian Federal Police. Her name was Leading Constable Kim Simpson. Now, Kim Simpson was given some questions before I participated in another waste of time interview, but and that's not being disrespectful to the Australian Federal Police, because the Australian Federal Police are a statutory body created under Australian law. In actual fact, they have no jurisdiction to deal with an alleged Commonwealth offence if it was bona fide against what we call the Commonwealth before Whitlam took the Commonwealth police force and called it the Australian Federal Police. So, you know, here we go. They need to know which side of the court they're playing on. But putting that to one side, I asked them to go away and validate the writ, because there's no piece of legislation that creates the King of Australia to give licence for proclamation of a writ. There is no question about that. That's what my law books are telling me as a senator. And you cannot go to the executive, because we have a doctrine in Australian law, and it's called separation of power. So what's done up at the executive level cannot participate down in the judiciary level. So anyway, suck that one and see how you go. But let me tell you how you win the fight, right? So let's just get number 40. So I got a phone call from Phoebe from the ABC. Now listen to what Phoebe had to say. Okay, I want to take this off me, because half my problem with my viewers is they can't hear me. But I'll turn the volume up. Now let's get it from the horse's mouth.
So you don't have to worry about that. And radio might be interested. I think it's Gary on at the moment. So it might play on radio if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I don't care. Yep.
I'll just put a recorder on now. Can I just get you to say your full name and how you'd like to be introduced for the record?
Rodney Norman Culleton, former federal senator for West Australia, party leader for the Great Australian Party.
Thanks, Rodney. And now the AEC says you are bankrupt and you failed to declare that to them. What's your response to that?
Well, who is the controlling mind that's made that claim from the AEC?
I don't have the answer to that.
Well, then how may be it a bona fide claim? I mean, AEC can't make that claim. Must be who's the individual that made the claim?
I don't think it's any one individual. We just got a statement saying the AEC have referred you to AFP.
Oh, okay. So who's signed off on the statement?
We don't get that information.
All right. So really, one has to question whether it's a true statement. But anyway, it's a bit like that one I sent you. It's undated. Yeah. Anyway,
what is your response? You know.
Oh, look. I believe. Well, not a belief. This is the third attempt to the Australian Federal Police as you've got documents before you. The first one, basically, the Australian Federal Police discontinued because it was satisfied that I couldn't be in breach of Section 44 after being given the evidence. The second complaint largely has been discontinued. That's the one from the prior election and actually hasn't physically gone to trial yet. So that's been a long, protracted complaint and certainly cost the taxpayers a lot of money. And this fresh complaint, I'm not sure how it's going to go with the rest of judicata. I mean, how many more complaints do you need to make to the AFP to say, or Australian Federal Police, to whereby they keep saying, well, we're not pursuing it any further?
They say, the evidence that they've got is your name appears on the National Register of Bankruptcy.
Well, look, that's just, that is something That may be a bona fide position, doesn't mean it's the true position. The evidence that I have, the legal advice that I have, matters are still before the court. The breaches of proper due process with the case in general, especially when an abuse of the federal court rules hadn't been adhered to, and in a sense no service of creditors petition originating motion to actually enliven a court to hear a matter of bankruptcy. And let's face it, bankruptcy is a very, very serious order to have against you, and I'm not going to consent to something when I know in my own mind at the time I was not a person who could be deemed insolvent, and that's and I'm going to stick by that all the time.
But then why would your name be on the register?
I'm not sure. That's something you might have to ask the Australian Financial Security Authority.
Okay.
Given the evidence that's come through and the mistakes that have been made and whatever, look, at the end of the day, just because it's there doesn't mean it's a true position. The matter's back for judicial review in the courts. It does take time. Everyone knows it costs a lot of money. And I mean, look, if it was the true case, how may I have standing in the courts? I'm currently in the courts under my own name. As I understand, if you're bankrupt, you have to get consent of a trustee. I don't have any trustee that runs or is over my affairs at all.
In your statement, you said you acknowledge the existence of a sequestration.
Yeah, I acknowledge that there appears to be a notice out there. Doesn't mean it's a true notice. And look, if this whole thing is annulled, which we believe it is on the evidence, and there has been a clear abuse of process, and the court is void and non-binding, which is the legal advice that I've got, then it's removed. It has to reflect the true position, and we say at the moment it doesn't. There was an abuse of proper due process, and for those reasons we stand with what we believe is to be on the evidence is true, and what they're doing is going on an order that really is not enforceable upon myself.
Okay. The other question I had is there seems to be a discrepancy in the spelling of your last name.
Here we go.
AEC said you're enrolled to vote under Culleton, spelled Cullerton, but we can't find anywhere else where you have that spelling.
No, I certainly know how to spell my name, and that's certainly not with an R. That's not a mistake at my end, and that was only brought to my attention at the WA election when I went in to enrol to vote, and I've never made an application to the Australian Electoral Commission to alter the spelling of my name. My name has always been spelt correctly. That is an error from the Australian Electoral Commission, not mine.
Okay, all right. Rodney, is there anything else you wanted to say at this point?
I just want to say that this has been a long, protracted argument. It's gone on for 9 years. It's cost me personally a lot of money in legal fees. I'm sure it's cost the taxpayers a lot of money over these alleged complaints. I'm not sure why the AEC or whoever the controlling mind is, which you don't know who's made the complaint, continues to make these allegations to whereby the police in most cases are dismissing all the claims because basically the position hasn't changed.
Great. All right, we'll leave it there for today, but thank you very much.
Okay, so you heard that. Now that was Phoebe at the ABC. Now, interesting enough, I get a phone call from the Australian Electoral Commission, and I want you to listen to this.
Hang on.
Mistakenly, referendum. We do this after every event, so it would look like, I'm looking at the handwriting, whoever filled in your declaration vote after the referendum in 23, it looks like there could have been an R. So somebody here mistakenly, and I'm going to blame my interstate colleagues because I know this person's from interstate, has then added in an R to your name, and from there that's why it's been picked up for referendum and for the state election and for the recent federal election that we just had. Processing this one that you've just done will correct it back to without an R, which is what you're saying that you actually want because it doesn't have an R in it.
Yeah, because normally what would happen if I was to make any change, I would have to fill out a declaration. But this person that made the error on my name without my knowledge, but anyway, won't hold it to account, was she a staff of the Australian Electoral Commission?
Yes. So it's more that when we do the declaration envelope, I think there's like a tiny little bit of information on there that says that we will use this as an enrolment form. People aren't generally worried about that when they're going in to vote. They're going in to vote to get their name crossed off and actually participate in voting. They're not thinking, someone's going to pick this up and it's going to change my name.
Bullshit.
So that is a mistake that we made based on his just... Look, if you can see what I'm looking at, I can see why it's been done.
But why would they have made a mistake? Was just her spelling my name wrong?
Well, whoever filled in the form, because it doesn't look like your handwriting, because it's different to the one that's on now, that looks like it could have been interpreted as an R. So when the person was doing the data entry, they've literally just followed the bouncy ball and not actually thought about, what your name was before, what the difference is. They have a question and they haven't done any of it. It's not generally part of our process. Usually we would call you and ask. So this is just a silly mistake that has happened.
Oh, silly mistake.
We're now going to correct now that we've got this new one from you.
So I'm glad, you know what, I'm glad someone from the Australian Electoral Commission has admitted it is a mistake by the Australian Electoral Commission and that they're going to remedy the mistake. Isn't that amazing? Normally, you don't ever get that.
No, 100%. I can see it. It was clearly should have been picked up and it shouldn't have gone out. Now we're fixing it, which is, you kind of go, we didn't even know it was a problem. So this will change that back. It will correct it to how it should be. And I do apologise for it happening.
No, I take the apology on board for the Australian Electoral Commission.
Okay, so there you have it. Now the AEC now has come out and admitted they apologise that the mistake was at their end. Now let's start to bounce the ball. So let me tell you, I'm putting a media release out, and it's simple as this, and I'm going to read it to you because now I'm going to turn the gun back on the Australian Electoral Commission, because in actual fact they're in contravention, I believe, of 136 of the Criminal Code Act. So let me read this to you. I've just done this media receipt. So former Senator Rod Culleton is hit back at the Australian Electoral Commission following its referral of his name to the Australian Federal Police for alleged breaches under Section 136 of the Criminal Code 1995. In a stunning revelation, it has now emerged that the AEC itself was responsible for inserting an error, Mr. Culleton's name, on official electoral form. And I'm telling you, I believe it interfered with my chances of getting elected. Erroneously adding an R to his surname and thereby misrecording his identity on the public record. Here's my statement. It is not I who has provided false and misleading information, said myself. It is the AEC who altered my identity without my consent or knowledge. That serious breach not only of the criminal code but also of the constitutional safeguards owed to a sworn Commonwealth officer, which I have been sworn under Section 42 of the Constitution. I've never revoked that. Mr. Culleton, who took the oath under Section 42 of the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act as a Senator in the 45th Parliament, has called on the AEC to immediately explain how such a misrepresentation was allowed to occur and why the error was used as a basis for a criminal referral. If anyone has breached Section 136 of the Criminal Code, it is not me. It is those who misled the public by falsifying the name on the elected official. This is contrary to the rule of law and the Constitution. Okay, now I'm now hitting the ball back over the net and shoving it straight to the wrong person, and in other words, they are dealing with a defunct referral. Okay, so that's that one. Can't get it better than that, can you? And like I say, Australia, the problem with our country is it's like if you don't control the weeds in your garden and you just keep sitting back and watching the footy and having a frothy and not going out and attending to the weeds, eventually the garden gets overgrown and it becomes a real issue to try and get everything under control. That is what has happened to our country. We've allowed, as all people of the Commonwealth, we have mismanaged our affairs. There is no question about that. We've allowed the technical weeds of an Australian law grow in our constitutional garden, and I tell you what, it is really hard to get them under control. But what I'm trying to educate you, as all Australians, is here you go. These people are making mistakes. I'm on the front line. I'm winning at every turn on the front line because I'm applying my little bit of Roundup on the garden, and I want Australian men to get their bloody spray bottles out and stop relying on the great women of this country. Because I tell you what, if it wasn't for the women standing up for where we are today, I wouldn't go forward, because I tell you, I thought bankers were hard to start, but Australian men, I take nothing away. I think it was Michael Griffiths the other day, although I don't condone all his language. But in other words, yeah, I mean, you know, we should all be putting posters up on this lamp pole outside this bus here at the moment, you know, lost, and put a set of balls there, because Australian men have lost their balls. There's no two ways about it. And I mean no disrespect for that. Now, the other one I'm doing is Section 92, which is a High Court. It's been accepted by the High Court of Australia. I'm doing it because we have a free right to travel throughout the Commonwealth. And during COVID, as you know, this is no bullshit. I was managing people home, getting them all through these barricades, these so-called borders. Now, Section 92 is a right. Section 92 of the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act is commerce and trade and intercourse. In other words, you have the free right to travel through this one self-governing colony to your honest seat of government. There can be no sub modo law, which is when you say some sub modo is something subject or conditional that overrides it. So Section 92 is the highest law in the country. As we know, in the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, you cannot bend it. The Palmer case has killed Section 92, unfortunately. The Australian law and the way his lawyers had argued it has killed our free right of intercourse to travel in the event there may be another COVID lockdown or bloody swine flu. I don't know, some nonsense dribbly nose effect. I don't know. But it prohibits, and with Section 92 under Australian law dead, we need to enliven it. Okay, it can be enlivened, because the stream cannot rise above its source, and we cannot have state governments trying to invalidate a right, okay, because state governments can only give you privileges. We're talking about a right here, so bugger off. So currently today, I think it's cost me about 10 grand. It went in for the filing fee, accepted by the High Court. Justice Beach Jones referred it back to the Federal Court of Australia. The Federal Court of Australia is now wanting me to put in a set of facts. Well, I'm not doing that, because I've told them they've got to prove jurisdiction. Now, all of a sudden, we're going back into the High Court, who is wanting another filing fee of $4,000. So, look, it's getting to the point now where it's cost nearly on $10,000, and notwithstanding our time or my time and whatever, it's becoming horrendously expensive. However, if I don't challenge it, we've lost our free right to travel, and we don't want to be able to be in a lockdown, which, you know, obviously affected people in many ways, including some people taking their own lives during the pandemic. So maybe I might, it's not about me paying, it's about we should pay. So I think I'm going to put something up on the Gap party, because I think it's politically important that we win out, and we can win this. There's no question about that. It's already been determined in the High Court. I think it's Delcy Johnson had the free right to travel. They tried to stop her from travelling, but it's a matter of right intercourse. You can do commerce and trade. You know, Clive Palmer could have done his commerce and trade sitting in his on his luxury yacht in Brisbane. But when it comes to intercourse, we need the right to come in and go and see our family members and have a beer. You can't do that. People like to be in the presence of their own family. So in other words, We have a right to go and see our friends, our families, have a beer. That's the law. I mean, if you don't believe me, go and have a look inside your passport. You know, and so we need to keep that. But if we don't challenge the Palmer case, which has killed Section 92, then we're going to lose it. Okay, so and I'm not prepared to do that. And I think all of us can have a bit of skin in the game on that one, because as people would appreciate, this stuff that I'm doing is not cheap. But anyway, I'm supposed to be a person with no money. But anyway, all right, well, that's it. That's my update. You know, like I said, the Commissioner of Titles is caught between a rock and a hard place. All our legal advice from 5 different legal individuals, including Queen's Counsel, have all said it's a no-brainer, we can win it. The only thing stopping us from going home is the Commissioner of Titles. The West Australian Police have clearly, unfortunately, been misled and involved themselves in essentially a crime of stealing millions of dollars worth of assets, including real land. I mean, this is not something we've just made up. This is actual fact. You can go on. I encourage anyone to go under the Civil Judgment Enforcement Act of Western Australia. Just go to that one first. Go to the definitions. I think it's Section 5 of the Civil Judgment Enforcement Act. It clearly says what a monetary judgment is and what a non-monetary judgment is, and I don't see where banks would want to go in and get non-monetary judgment when they're claiming to be a creditor, a judgment creditor, so they're going and getting orders to prove their debt. So just reiterating what's happening, the banks, if they don't have a legal right to the asset and they haven't registered certain assignments on the title, and they choose to go to court, they don't do it through the Transfer of Land Act, which is a power of sale, that then gives a strong inference that they only have an equitable right to the land, not a legal right. So they've got to go and prove their debt through a statement of claim, which is why you put a statement of claim in to prove the debt. And then, but that's their choice. But what they're doing is they're going under the Civil Judgment Enforcement Act. They're then going and getting a property seizure delivery order, which can only be applied to a non-monetary judgment and does not bind the land. So if they don't go and get other orders after that, if they get vacant possession and they don't go and get other orders, the property cannot be sold. It is fraud on title, game, set, match, boom. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to go and do a bit of work. Good to see we've got a big following doing it, and I really just want to give everyone the encouragement. This is your country. This is your country, and if we do this together, we can correct it. I mean, you know, I was in the Parliament. Doesn't make me any better than you. I mean, I knew Albanese. I mean, his biggest claim to fame was his beer, elbow beer. He sat in my office. I know Anthony Albanese very well. In actual fact, I believe Anthony Albanese is a person who is in contravention of Section 44(1) of the Constitution. I also have strong evidence that George Brandis, who allegedly referred me to the Court of Disputed Returns, has privileges back to Israel. I mean, where do we all get off on this, Australia? Do we just allow these people to keep taking away our property rights, which we just saw in South Australia, that the government's now passing bills that if you've got vacant land, they can just come and grab it and not pay you for it? I mean, when is the Australian men going to get behind the Australian women and stand up and say, listen, guys, this is not happening? You know, but I don't know. But anyway, I'm just trying to give you confidence that if you stand with me, you know, and get behind this party, we can make a real difference. So that's enough. Otherwise, I'll bore you to tears. But there's the evidence. I can't put it any fair and squarer than that. God bless, and see you again in the winner's circle. Bye for now.